Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over a very entertaining article that you will definitely appreciate, titled, I regret belittling men. At 63 years old, I've ended up alone. And a shout out to Ryan for sending in this story. And guys, this article is written by a woman. She's spent her career as a journalist, as a writer, a broadcaster, all that. And she's also spent her life as a lifelong feminist. A definite ball-busting, hard ASS feminist who now in her early 60s is realizing the mistakes she's made on multiple fronts. And she's deeply regretful that she never got married, no husband, no kids, no family, nothing. Thanks to what all took place about 50 some odd years ago when she was off at the university and allowed herself to be brainwashed by somebody else's idea on how things are and became the type that not only men can't stand, but also probably a lot of women too. The my way is the highway, all guys are the enemy, the adversary, that type of thing, feminist. And you can thank people like her for the mess that we're in today. And oh yeah, by the way, you're going to see that she was a bit of a carousel rider back then because that was empowerment. And I've been going to go over here, guys, making the point that while obviously too little too late, and I don't feel bad for her, this is going to show you how a lot of these types with the mentality they have eventually come to the point they realize they've messed up. The way of their thinking was completely wrong, and they're regretful. But unfortunately, the damage has been done. So it's one thing when a bunch of guys pick apart and see and point out where things, the thinking, the attitude has gone wrong. But it's one thing when you have a former member of the sisterhood pointing out where she went wrong and the whole mentality, the mindset is definitely off. So I thought you guys would find this quite entertaining. Now, before I get into our main event here, I got a quick email from a guy who's been watching me a long time. He's married, good marriage, but his wife obviously thinks a lot of my stories, a lot of things I cover here are a bunch of BS. And he has a fun time pointing things out to her that are not BS. Well, he writes in a little experience he had with her, once again proving that what I talk about in this channel and the subject matter is not BS. And of course, she's not too happy about it. He says here, hello SSM. I wrote in a while back about how my wife thinks your stories are mostly fake. Well, guess what? We were driving home the other night, and while listening to one of those female psychologist therapists who has a radio show where people call in for advice. Apparently, this pregnant gal calls in and admits to not knowing who the father of her baby is. That sounds like some of the things on my channel. But of course, if it's on somebody else, a woman's podcast or broadcast, then it's real. But if I cover it, it's bullshit, huh? Well, the woman who called in narrowed it down to two men. Narrowed it down that there's multiple potential baby daddies here. But only wants one of the men to raise the baby because he's got all the makings of a wonderful father. While the other one is, well, a Chad. Her question was basically to the therapist, is she wrong for wanting to tell the nice guy the baby is his, even if it might not be? Right there. Sounds like one of the stories I cover here that your wife thinks is nonsense. Now does she see? Let's just say this didn't make my wife very happy, and she was probably wishing she could be the therapist and give this woman a piece of her mind. Me, I just laughed and shook my head. Yeah, because you're used to this. You know this crap happens. And it was just probably driving your wife crazy because she knew probably the second this came in, you're probably like, because, yeah, women don't like to be wrong. The first thing the therapist told this woman was, you're not alone. She then went into the whole deal about DNA testing and the consequences for the two men involved. The so-called nice guy finding out later that the child isn't his, and the other man finding out that he's been denied knowing that he's the father. The radio host went further into the emotional trauma for the nice guy when he finds out that he's given his emotional and financial investment into raising another man's offspring. So, interestingly enough, she wasn't siding with the woman who called in. Well, good for her. She shouldn't be siding with the woman that called in. She should be tearing her a new one for potentially deciding to lie to the guy just because he'd make a better dad. DNA test, gentlemen. The radio host then shed light on why most new moms say the baby looks like the father. Rather than try to quote what she said, I Googled it and got a response from AI, which was very similar. Apparently, A new mom might say the baby looks like the father for a combination of psychological and evolutionary reasons, such as to secure the father's emotional investment and ensure paternal care for the child, or because perception of resemblance can be influenced by close relatives and friends. While early research suggested babies look more like their fathers, later studies show that babies resemble both parents equally or even mothers more, indicating the mother's statement can be a social strategy rather than a direct observation of genetics. Once the call ended, I attempted to tell my wife how the nice guy was the pregnant woman's boyfriend and she had unprotected SCX with Chad. My wife wouldn't listen any further, and she still thinks most of your stories are fake. Bro, I'm glad you obviously have a good relationship with your wife, even though, you both go back and forth on about my channel and the subject matter here. But at the end of the day, she doesn't want to be right. You could have all this evidence that these stories are real, and still, she's not going to bend. Remember that song from the 90s from the band The Spin Doctors, Little Miss Can't Be Wrong? Right there. I rest my case. But anyhow, keep on watching. Have fun. But she ain't ever going to change her mind. I'm telling you that right now, brother. Okay, guys. Now on to the story about the remorseful feminists who none of us will feel bad about. Again, this article's titled, I Regret Belittling Men. At 63 years old, I've ended up alone. So she says here, I had always imagined I would end up married with 2 wonderful children and living in a house in the countryside. I paid a hefty price for my so-called liberation. Yes, you did. A few years ago, I went to Italy with my then-boyfriend James. As we sat tucking into a plate of whatever at some seaside restaurant, I struck up a conversation with the waiter in Italian. While I was enjoying myself, James sat glumly and fiddled awkwardly with his phone. Back in the hotel room, he asked why I had ignored him. By speaking in a language he didn't understand, he said I managed to make him feel small. Doesn't sound like she's learned anything yet, or maybe this was her wake-up moment. Yeah, that's what you were doing. It's one thing to say little things to the waiter in Italian, but if she's babbling on for like several minutes, yeah. Well, I could see his point. I spent quite a while chatting away, oblivious to how he must be feeling. I then went on to joke that as the Italian speaker, I would order for us. After all, he didn't know what that particular thing meant. I was showing off. It wasn't the first time something like that has happened to me. I've always taken the driver's seat. Been determined to get the last word and was too busy with books to master the art of charm. You didn't care. You didn't need a fucking book to learn how to master the art of charm. You were just some ball-busting feminist. You said right there, always had to take the driver's seat. Been determined to get the last word in. People like that, I don't care, both men and women don't like people like that. Nobody likes a my way or the highway ball-busting asshole, And that's obviously what she was, especially if it's a guy with a woman. I'm convinced that the reason I'm still booking a table for one at the age of 63 instead of having settled with a significant other is because, like so many women of my generation, feminism has ruined my love life. No, you, my dear muffin, I gotta say something sexist and offensive. You are the one that ruined it. Yes, feminism and the brainwashing of that mamba jahamba did its part, but you made the choice to ruin your life by getting wrapped up in that bullshit and being an asshole. Always being in the driver's seat, always having the last word, and countless others. And the damage that's been done by that is why a lot of what we have today. But I'm glad you can admit it. Instead of empowering us, those ideals of the second wave feminists made us believe that marriage and being domestic were to be avoided like the plague, and that men were competition rather than partners. See? At a young age, you let yourself be brainwashed by somebody else's idea how it's supposed to be. And look, all you threw away in your life because of that. I might have a successful career as a writer and broadcaster, but I've never had children or been married, and my longest relationship lasted 8 years. I regret this. I'd always imagined I would end up married with 2 wonderful children, living in a house in the countryside. I paid a hefty price, blah, blah, blah. I was 17 years old and a pupil at Godolphin and Latimer, one of Britain's most academic institutions. You mean indoctrination centers? When I was introduced to the women's liberation movement, oh, that sounds like a whole lot of fun. It offered such hope and excitement, and we spent our lunch breaks soaking up the feminist mantras of Germaine Greer and Betty Friedan. As in Act Like Men, they cried as they burnt their bras and demonized housework and the family. Act like men, huh? Yeah, that's a real attractive quality in women. And demonize the family, huh? Well, no surprise what has happened to the nuclear family in the West. Thank you. By the time I was 25 years old, I was clutching a degree in French and Italian. I was a bright, confident feminist, keen to flex her intellectual muscles and to never let a man get the last word. Oh, you were such a fun person to be around. Lady, nobody likes someone like that. The I have to have the last word type. The type that, no matter what it is, they know everything. And is going to debate and argue everyone. That's just an asshole. You became a big giant asshole. Big giant smelly asshole. Both men and women don't like people like that. Nobody likes someone like that. I read Nietzsche for fun, and my bedside table had always buckled beneath the weight of substantial, intellectually challenging books. At first, men loved my wit and intelligence, saying, "You're such a breath of fresh air. I love talking to you. You're the first woman I've met who stimulates me." They drill. Yeah, and these were probably a bunch of beta males, to be perfectly frank. That was until I had lectured them for the umpteenth time on the virtues of modernism, saying you'll never win an argument. They would say you'd never win an argument against Kate. One man said as he watched me outsmart yet another potential lover, subtext, don't bother. So you enjoyed this. You saw men as the enemy, the adversary, and everyone was an opportunity for you to assert your dominance, that you're better, you're smarter, and all that. You know, to me, this behavior comes from someone that's deeply insecure. People that have to constantly have the last word, always have to be right, no matter what it is, they know everything about everything, belittle others. That's someone that's deeply insecure. And that's not strength. That's not something that, even like the ideas of having a strong, independent woman, no, that behavior comes from someone that's weak. Someone that has strength is going to be humble and is going to sit back and listen. Do more listening than speaking, because you can't be great at everything. Men have always called me intimidating, scary, and opinionated. I now see that was not only what I was trying to prove, that I was, let me say this again. I now see that not only was I trying to prove I was their intellectual equal or superior, I was treating every encounter with a man like he was my adversary. Again, another asshole feminist. And I believe you're deeply insecure. If a date brought me a bouquet of flowers, oh Jesus, instead of smiling and putting them in a vase of water, I would bite their head off, saying, "Can't you buy me some nice olive oil or balsamic vinegar?" Don't you have enough balsamic vinegar running through your veins, lady? You yelled at a guy for bringing you flowers. Now he should have known not to give an effing bouquet of flowers, but still. I bet you probably would have yelled at him if he brought you the fucking vinegar. I said with an eye roll to one hapless suitor as he stood wiltering faster than the fragrance offering that he held in his hand. He had bothered to think about making me happy, and I crushed it for him. Again, you're an asshole. You were mean. You enjoyed this. What the fuck? Did your dad mistreat you when you were younger? Did bad things happen because of men that just made you decide that every guy you have to treat like shit like this? Seriously. Again, I don't feel bad for you. I placed so much importance on finding a strong man who could match me that I forgot men are people with feelings too. Instead, I forgot I had feelings and hid my softness. I now see that I longed to be loved, but I was too scared to be vulnerable. I told you you're deep down insecure, deep down a coward for how you behaved. I was using my sharp mind to protect my all-too-soft heart against further rejection. Funny, she said she was looking for a strong man to match her. This isn't the first time that You have these strong independent types. This is, an old school feminist here. Now we got the ones with blue hair and green hair and the fucking nose ring, the hoop in the nose ring. Or just seemingly attractive women that are a bunch of ball-busting feminists too, who want a strong man. Because, and that's the thing, no strong man, if you will, call them the alphas, whatever, successful man, would ever want to be around a woman like this. Because it's like being with another dude, an asshole dude. Two bowls in a pen, doesn't work. The only guys a woman like this can get are weak-ass guys that would put up with her shit. Can you imagine, guys? Can you imagine being on a date with her and her giving you shit after you actually got her some... Not that you guys would give flowers on the first fucking date, but let's just say you did. And, like, apologizing for it. You would never end up on a date with someone like this. The second she opened her mouth, you'd be like, out of there. Like the goddamn Roadrunner from Looney Tunes. Anyhow. While I pretend to enjoy it, I felt uncomfortable at sex so early on. I felt empty and used. Used? I thought that was obviously being empowered by being just like a guy, being able to sleep around just like a guy. My generation of women were encouraged to have sex like a man. In other words, have casual sex. But it backfired. Fast forward to today, the idea that women are different from men and that casual sex can be harmful to us is gaining traction. No shit. Look at the mess we're in right now. In her latest book, A New Guide to Sex in the 21st Century, The Young Adult Adaptation, Louise Perry explores how the sexual revolution impacted women negatively and led to unwanted consequences. Yeah. 2 words, OnlyFans. Although OnlyFans is actually 1 word, but you get the point. She argues that casual sex, dating apps, pornography, and the normalization of sexual kinks are putting women at risk. Although contraception has reduced the chances of pregnancy, she points to the risk of contracting diseases or being a victim of violence in a culture where premarital sex is the norm. Yeah, nobody ever talks about the STDs. It's always about pregnancy. She believes that society would benefit from returning to traditional values about sex. What? What? Returning to traditional values? Now she says, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating a return to the 1950s when women were on the shelf by 30 and getting a suitable husband was their goal in life. But I wonder if by refusing to show any chinks in my intellectual armor, I'm the one who's losing out. Losing, you've lost. You're 63. You got 1 foot in the fucking grave, lady. I'm being honest here. And of course she has to put in, not that I'm saying I want to go back to the 1950s or anything. Whilst I'll never be a giggly man-pleaser and have no intention of playing second fiddle to a man, the confident signals I've been giving out all those years were at odds with what was going on inside. I don't say it's confidence. I'd say it's arrogance. Because deep down, your behavior, the way you described yourself all these years as men, comes from insecurity. Insecure people aren't confident. They are usually arrogant because they have to overcompensate amongst men. And that's what you were doing all this time here. That is not confidence. That you're deep down insecure. And you still have to mention, I'm never going to be a giggly man pleaser, or I'm never going to play second fiddle to a man. So you haven't really learned that much. I think you're saying what you're saying here, but deep down you don't want to change. I've learned to step back and let things go. And I've realized that things mustn't always veer towards the satisfaction of the self. I'm stuck by how easy and peaceful it feels to let my dates and boyfriends take the lead. It's not a case of dumbing down or morphing into a Stepford woman, but simply dialing down a bit for me and letting them shine. FYI, my diary is wide open. Go on it. I dare you. No thanks. I do not want to see or read your diary. So there you go. Now, she's saying she's regretful and she didn't have the life that she realized that she really deep down wanted to have. A husband, a marriage, children, all that. But yet you can see at the end she's not quite willing to go back so much on her I am woman, hear me roar ways. But the point of the whole thing is that, yeah, like so many others, they got wrapped into somebody's idea how things had to be or should be, and they threw away a life they could have had, all because of this bullshit. And look at the mess it's caused, the ripple effect it's caused across the world, you know? But if you're sincere about this, lady, okay, great, then start being a pleasant person. Start being a nice, genuine person if you claim that's who you are deep down. But I'm not convinced that all this came from confidence. I see a deeply insecure individual here who had to overcompensate and shit on others to make yourself feel better. Make men out to the bad guy. Confident people don't do that. They don't need to do that to make themselves feel better here. So anyhow, guys, that's nice. Again, she's saying that, but I don't quite 100% think that she's 100% sincere on all those things. So, she's remorseful and regretful about what she lost, what she missed out on. I frankly don't feel bad, because look at the damages she and just so many like her have caused, and she allowed it to happen. But if that means maybe she might be a little more of a pleasant person for the rest of her life, well then good. I can certainly hope so. We can use more pleasant people in this world. But, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and she's 63. When you're 63, you pretty much have one foot in the fucking grave. So, but if she's going to be nicer to people, that's good to hear. But anyhow, another one, openly admitting that, yeah, I was an asshole. Yeah, that mindset, that attitude wasn't exactly right, and I'm regretful. So we can all get a smile on our face by hearing something like this. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And guys, you find a good article you want me to cover, or you got a great personal story you want to send in, particularly one that will make the eyes roll of the wife of the guy that wrote in earlier, send it my way, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. And if it's a good one, I'll definitely cover it. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.